And he says, well, we'll have her get somebody for you then. So he calls this girl up in the telephone office in Tecumseh. Yeah, sure, I'll be out at 9 o'clock. Well, wait a minute, Duane's with me and you gotta find somebody. Well, all them operators listen to everybody's private call. So Vonnie, that ends up being your grandma and my wife, listen, I'll go. And so that's how I met her. Because Goldsmith is having his last fling with a girl from Ridgeway and he's engaged to a girl in New Jersey, or we never would have met.
So which one did he end up marrying?
The one from
New Jersey?
New Jersey. And your ma was great friends with her when they came to mine and lived for a while. Well, before we went to Charlotte the first time. It was kind of funny. I don't know if that story ever got told or or not. And I had something else in my head there.
So you dated Mom a little bit, but you didn't like that she smoked.
Oh!
That was news to me.
Okay. We're on the back porch of our folks' house in Tecumseh. And it's the third time I went out with her. She says, you've never kissed me. I said, as long as your lips touch cigarettes, they'll never touch mine. And I said, I ain't saying that you're gonna tell me you're gonna quit, and then you hook me, and then you start smoking. I'm talking 6 weeks from the last time you touched one. 6 weeks later, she called me up. Do I gotta say any more?
I thought there was something too about you just went to Tecumseh and you saw her or something on the street, or no? Am I mixed up on that? Like after that? Like, I felt like there was some sort of random meeting at that point, but maybe I'm mixed up, so.
Well, there was, and that could have been in that 3. She got out of work, and when I went around that corner by where she lived with her folks, she was crossing the street. And so I stopped and she opened the door and she got in. So whether we drove around some then or that was the third time, I don't know, but maybe that had something to do with, because I never asked a girl out in my life. And it was something like that, and my sisters were always getting me somebody because they wanted to go with that guy, and I had to get that guy for them. Double date. And the way I think that night I kind of made up my mind that I'll drive around, and if I don't see her, evidently I'm not supposed to or something, then I'll just forget it. Because when you mentioned that, I remember turning on that corner by the house. She was walking across the street right towards the driveway. At that point, my lights picked her off. I kind of forgot about that.
So after you guys got married, then you moved into an upstairs apartment on the corner of
Wabash and Sherman.
Wabash and Sherman. And you're still farming with Grandpa. And you came home one day, well, you were in the field one day and you saw a pheasant.
Well, was picking corn on the west side of the expressway, and it was only 2-lane then, and a pheasant flew out when I picked corn and went across 23. And this guy coming up 23 of the car sees it, man, he pulls off the road and gets out with his shotgun and boom! And went down, and that all happened like that. And I shut the tractor off and got off and started screaming and hollering, running towards the fence because they had fence along 23 there. And he decided that he better get in his car and get out of there. I went over and got the pheasant, and he shot it down on our side of 23. And so I took it up to the house where I was picking corn there, And the guy's name was Fred Jasper. He said, I'll dress it out and you pick another round, because it was a half-mile field and you'd just pick one round, you'd have a load of corn. And you take it home to your wife and she can fix it for supper when you get done milking. So I picked another load and I got back and he had it done. So I took it, and it was half a mile, 3/4 of a mile west of 23 there where we lived. And so we lived in an upstairs apartment. And so I go in there and she's in the kitchen. I got my hand behind me with the pheasant in it, but I'm all blood from the pheasant. And she goes, "What happened?" I said, "I got my hand in the corn picker." And I pulls this pheasant out. Then and I says, "Fix it for supper." I thought she was going to kill me. You know? Well, what would that been? Probably. We started picking corn, and I got to stop and think, when did I get my hand in the corn picker? The 10th of December, I think it was. So this was probably in October or November, you know. And so it told me, and when I got my hand caught in the corn picker, time I realized I was caught, the tractor was shut off, the power takeoff was shut off. This little finger is between two gears. These 3 fingers are ready to go through the trash rolls. What happened, I was picking corn north of town, and it was my hand, I don't like wearing gloves. And it was the 10th of December, and my hands are getting cold. I come back through town, I stop and got a pair of gloves. So I'm going home to do chores, and I go by this farm. There's 65 acres there, and it's all corn, and we ain't got there yet, and it's the 10th of December, and I had an empty wagon. I thought, I'll just make a round, and that's much more corn picked, you know. Well, I'm out in the middle of the field picking corn, and I hear something, and I turn like this to see what it is, and them gloves are too long for my fingers. And there's gears that didn't have shields on them. It was a new picker. And you can, those gear marks are in there. See how much shorter that finger is than the other one?
Oh, wow.
And I'm caught, and these 3 fingers are ready to go through the rolls. When I realize I'm caught, the tractor shut off, the picker shut off, and I figured the Lord did it for me, you know, because if these 3 fingers would have started in the rolls there, it'd have tore me all apart, you know, and I'd have bled to death right there. And so we usually have the picker on the end when there's a toolbox on the light bracket. Well, we still ain't done picking or combining beans, and the combine's got a hydraulic table, and the M's the only thing that's got a hydraulic to run that. So we didn't have the picker on the M, we had it on the H. The H didn't have a toolbox on it. So I'm like, what are you gonna do? And I look down, there's a 10-inch crescent wrench laying on the platform. Where it come from, I have no idea. And so I'm taking the picker apart to get out, and then the, you know, it goes through your head. Well, all you gotta do is drop that and you're screwed, you know. But I got it apart and laid all the parts there. It never hurt, and it never bled until I got out. And then I tied a hanky around my wrist so that, and walked through the mud and up to the house, and there at Eastham Island, you know, they're from, I think they were from Italy. I could never understand the woman, but I went to the back door and knocked, she come, and I said, "Call my folks and tell them to come and get me." And she starts lingoing, you know. Come on in. The telephone's clear in the front of the house, and I go in the back door. Well, mud, you know. And then I'm calling, and then evidently I didn't have it tight enough. I was leaking blood all the way, and I thought the lady was going to pass out on me. You know. And I got somebody, but usually Ma or one of the girls would come and get me when, you know, my dad come. So I'm trying to get in the pickup with my hand, wrist tied up with this and that, and of course, what happened? Got my hand in the corn picker. Oh, you never heard such carrying in your life. And I got home, and Ma took me right over to Ann Arbor, and I assume Luella went and got Bonnie. I don't know exactly what all took place. And I waited quite a long time for a doctor that night, and I never got infection in it. They said I would never get a fingernail, but there's one there. And it healed up good. But it was one of those deals. And so I look at it today like, you know, if you hadn't lied that you got your hand in the corn picker to your wife, being all blood, you would never, maybe your hands wouldn't have got cold, I don't know.
Gave you a chance to savor the flavor, like, oh, you remember that story? Well, let's see. I do think it's funny that, like, you and my mom both have, like, a chemicals in the eye story, and you and I both have a tracking blood through the house story, because I was running around the house and slid into one of the corners of the wall and split my toe without realizing that. I'm used to constantly bashing my feet into stuff, and I didn't think much of it. So I'm wandering around the house. It was almost like those Family Circle comics where Billy gets sent on an errand and you can see his little dotted line pattern. It was that, but bloody footprints all throughout the house. And I'm standing looking into the living room, and somebody, I think it was Drew, noticed that there's bloody footprints every place. Goes, who's bleeding? Him and me at the same time. Oh! Alex, look at your son! Oh! They took me into the bathroom and just about soaked my foot in alcohol.
Oh. Yuck.
And to think of it, if it's the foot I remember it being, that might explain why that nail comes in funny even now.
It could be. Could be. Okay, so you moved to Coles, 60 to 61. That was your first time to Eaton County. Then you went to Feldkamp, 61 to 66 or 67.
67.
And so you already talked about Clarence. And then you bought the house on Hartel Road.
Farm.
Farm on Hartel Road.
In 65, and we couldn't move till 67 because we had a 5-year contract with Feldkamps.
Okay.
So I rented it the first year to DeRoche's. That's how I met DeRoche's.
Oh, okay. And then, so the story that I bought from Hartel Road is about Joe Papernick's runt baby pig.
Well, it's hard for me for how many years has been involved. I met Joe at Michigan State, and that was 70 years ago when I went up there. And then rented a farm across the road from him and left Milan and come to Eaton County. That is whatever you want to come up with, and we were great friends. I mean, we did a lot of stuff together. And then the next neighbor, Clarence Milburn, and Joe were great buddies, and Clarence come down through Joe when I was milking there. And we got to talking, and he traced back and worked with my father-in-law in woolen mills in Yale, Michigan, back when they were young. And it was so unreal to the fact of, so when his wife got home from work that day, Zelma, he told her, and they were right down there, and we were like grandkids to them because they remember when Bonnie was born and the whole thing, and they were just unreal people. And how you say it, you know, I don't know. So Joe had brood sows and sold feeder pigs. And so when he'd farrow them in the spring, he milked cows. How many, I probably shouldn't say that, how many kids he had when,
It might have been 12, I'm not sure. I don't know how many.
I think it was 11. Because Vicky was born just before we moved up there in 1960. The twins wasn't born when we moved there in 60, but they were born in 1960. And the older kids I knew. So Joe's feeder pigs are big enough to sell, so we had stock racks on the pickup to haul kids 4-H stuff around, and he come and got it and took feeder pigs over to Hastings and sold them. Well, a guy that buys a pickup load of feeder pigs, if there's a run in there, he won't take it because he feels that it isn't worth as much as the good pigs are. And Joe brought the truck back and never said a word. I went to take the rack off the pickup and here's this run pig in there. So we made a place and put it, and we were freshening cows. So that first milk colostrum, you can't sell it, and so we're feeding it to pig. Man, you never seen anything grow so fast in your life. All the milk it wanted to eat and all the ground feed it wanted to eat. And I don't know how big the pig was getting. It was probably pretty near that big. And we were done freshening cows, and I got done milking, and geez, I feed that pig. So I rinsed the strainer and milkers out and took that pail of water with that foam out there, dumped it in the hot trough, and that pig could hear you 12, 15 foot away, and he'd start talking to you. And you would talk back with something, you know, and get over there, and he's all ready to stick his nose in that milk. And I dumped that pail of water with that foam on in there, and he stuck his nose. He backed up like that, and he looked me right in the eye like, "You dirty sucker, what are you trying to pull?" And he put his head right on the ground and went right under that hog trough and threw it up over the gate. And I go, long night, long day till tonight. So I'm raking hay, and all day long all I'm thinking about is that pig didn't have nothing. He had ground feed, but he didn't have any liquid, you know. So we started milking that night, and I told Donnie the first pail of milk, 16-quart pail milk, took out there and fed the pig. And so from that day on, the first milk we milked every time we took out to the pig got the milk before it put it in the tank. That pig, when we butchered it, hung over 320 pounds. And there was so little fat in the bacon, you had to put grease in the frying pan to fry it.
That's almost as much as I weigh. Like only 10 pounds off, really.
Of a what?
That's only 10 pounds off what I weigh. I'm 330 myself. I got about 20 minutes left on this battery,
Okay.
so I'm going to pause the recording and swap.